My first girlfriend hacked into my email and withdrew $65,000 for her entertainment, and then for most of my life, relationships weren't exactly a priority. Sure, I'd been on a few dates here and there, but between working as a programmer at a promising company and obsessing over personal projects, my social life was practically non-existent. At 27, the closest I'd ever come to a girlfriend was a half-hearted attempt at flirting with a barista who misspelled my name as Aaron. I just didn't have time, or so I told myself. Enter Chloe. She was like no one I'd ever met. We matched on a dating app, and her first message wasn't some boring "hey." No, it was, "Do you believe in fate, or was this algorithmic genius?" I was hooked. We started chatting, and within days, I knew I wanted to meet her. Chloe was an artist. At least that's how she described herself. She painted, traveled, and could quote 19th century poetry without missing a beat. She was intoxicating. When we finally met for dinner, she was even more captivating in person. She wore this vintage green dress that made her stand out in the sea of business casual types at the restaurant. Her laugh was loud and unrestrained, and she had a way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person in the world. By the time dessert came around, I was completely infatuated. "You're nothing like I expected," she said, twirling her wine glass. "I thought programmers were all spreadsheets and equations, but you're different." I didn't know what to say. No one had ever talked to me like that before. Over the next few weeks, Chloe consumed my world. We spent hours talking about art, philosophy, and her travels. She dragged me out of my comfort zone. Impromptu road trips, late-night museum visits, and expensive dinners at places I'd never set foot in alone. Daniel, my closest friend, mocked me mercilessly. So, the great Erin is finally human. Who knew all it took was a manic pixie dream girl? Leah, on the other hand, was less amused. "She's interesting," she said carefully after meeting Chloe at an office dinner. Leah, my best employee and arguably my most trusted confidant, rarely weighed in on my personal life. 30 and relentlessly composed, she was the type who thought things through before speaking. Her cautious tone should have been a red flag, but I brushed it off. "She makes you happy, though," Leah added with a faint smile. "That's good. Just don't lose yourself." Leah's words stayed in my mind longer than I'd admit, but it was hard to think clearly when Chloe was around. She had a way of commanding every ounce of your attention. When she laughed, it was like nothing else existed. When she leaned close and whispered, "You're too good for this boring life," I believed her. For the first time, I felt alive. The first crack in the perfect picture came about 2 months into the relationship. It was a quiet evening at my apartment. Chloe sprawled on the couch scrolling through her phone while I worked on some late-stage debugging for a client project. Out of nowhere, she looked up and asked, "What's your email password?" "What?" I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Your email password," she repeated with a playful smirk. "I want to see if you've been hiding fan mail from your exes." I shook my head. "I don't have any exes. And why would I give you my email password?" Her expression didn't change. "Relax, I'm just messing with you." She laughed, but something about the way she looked at me lingered, a mix of curiosity and challenge. I let it slide, but it stayed with me. That night, Chloe insisted on ordering expensive wine for movie night. I didn't think twice about letting her borrow my laptop to make the purchase. "Your credit card info is saved here, right?" she asked casually. I nodded, distracted by the code on my screen. In hindsight, I should have paid more attention. By the time I noticed the first withdrawal, the relationship had fully consumed me. Chloe had an uncanny ability to make everything about her seem urgent and exciting. A weekend in Vegas? Sure, why not? Dinner at that rooftop bar downtown? Let's go. Art supplies she just had to have for a new project? Of course. I was making good money, and honestly, I loved seeing her happy. But $10,000 missing from my account? That was harder to justify. It happened on a Saturday afternoon. Chloe had gone to an art exhibit with a friend, and I was finally catching up on personal errands. I logged into my bank account to pay a credit card bill and froze when I saw the number. $10,000 withdrawn just 3 days earlier. I scrolled through my transaction history and spotted more. $25,000 2 weeks ago, and $30,000 the week before that. My stomach churned. That wasn't me. I didn't make those withdrawals. I called the bank immediately. The rep confirmed the transactions and said they'd been made electronically using my login information. I asked what device had been used, already fearing the answer. It's a MacBook Pro, the rep said. I felt sick. That was my laptop, my device, my account. When Chloe came back that evening, I was still at my desk, staring at the bank statements. She breezed in, kissed my cheek, and dropped her bag on the floor. "What's wrong?" she asked, tilting her head. I couldn't bring myself to accuse her outright. Instead, I said, "Something's wrong with my bank account. Money's been withdrawn, and I didn't authorize it." Her expression didn't change. If anything, she looked amused. "That's weird," she said casually, pulling off her shoes. "Did you call the bank?" "Yes," I said. "And they said it was my laptop that made the transactions." For a split second, her eyes flickered, barely perceptible, but enough to confirm what I was already dreading. "Chloe," I said, my voice low, "did you do this?" She smiled, slow and unbothered. "Aaron, you're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I repeated, staring at her. My voice came out sharper than I expected. "Chloe, $65,000 is missing from my account. That's not an overreaction. It's fraud." She sighed like I was a child who just couldn't grasp the obvious. "Fraud? Come on, Aaron. I didn't steal it. I borrowed it." Her nonchalance made my jaw tighten. "Borrowed? Was this some kind of joke? You borrowed $65,000? For what?" Chloe rolled her eyes and sank onto the couch, stretching her legs like we were arguing about who left the lights on. "Relax. It's not like I used it for drugs or something illegal. I bought a few things. Tickets to Miami, some art supplies, a new camera. I knew you'd freak out, but honestly, I thought you'd understand. You love me, right?" Her words hit me like a truck. Love. She was twisting it, using it as a shield, as if the mere fact that I cared about her could excuse her taking a massive amount of money without even asking. "You thought I'd understand?" I asked, incredulous. "Chloe, this is insane. You can't just take that kind of money. Do you have any idea what this could mean? What if I couldn't pay my rent or—" "Don't be so dramatic," she interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "You're not going broke anytime soon. I mean, you make 6 figures, and your company practically worships you. You'll barely even notice it's gone." I stood frozen, torn between disbelief and fury. This wasn't some minor misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated. And yet, as much as I hated to admit it, I didn't want to lose her. Chloe had become such a fixture in my life that the idea of confronting her felt almost impossible. "Why didn't you just ask me?" I finally said, my voice quieter now. "If you needed money, I would have helped you." She laughed, a soft, disarming sound that only made my anger burn hotter. "Because you're predictable, Aaron. You would have asked a million questions and made it a whole thing. This way, it's done, and I'm already working on paying it back." I blinked. "Paying it back?" She nodded like it was the simplest thing in the world. "I wrote a check for $65,000. It's from my dad's account. He's loaded, so it's not a big deal. I was going to give it to you tomorrow. You didn't have to freak out like this." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. She wasn't even denying it. To her, this was just some elaborate game, a problem solved before it had even started. But what shocked me more than anything was how calm she was, as if my feelings didn't even factor into her equation. "What if I hadn't noticed?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What if I'd gone weeks without realizing the money was gone?" Chloe shrugged, like it didn't matter. "Then you'd have the check in your hand now, and we wouldn't be arguing." Her lack of remorse made me want to scream. Instead, I turned away, trying to catch my breath. This wasn't the Chloe I thought I knew. Or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. The next morning, I confided in Leah. We were sitting in her office, the faint smell of stale coffee lingering in the air. Leah had been trying to cut back on caffeine, but judging by the half-empty mug on her desk, it wasn't going well. "You need to talk to her again," Leah said after I explained the situation. "This isn't just a mistake, Aaron. It's a pattern. And patterns don't go away overnight. What do you mean? I asked, though I already had an idea where she was going. Leah leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. I mean, Chloe doesn't sound like someone who cares about consequences. She sounds like someone who's used to getting her way, no matter the cost. I hated how much sense Leah made. Chloe was impulsive. That was part of what I loved about her. But this wasn't spontaneity. It was reckless entitlement. She wrote me a check, I said weakly, as if that somehow made it better. She said her dad would cover it. Leah raised an eyebrow. And you believe her? I hesitated. That was the problem. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Chloe had never lied to me outright. But then again, she'd never stolen from me either. The fact that I was even in this situation made me question everything. I don't know, I admitted. But I don't think I can just throw her under the bus. I love her, Leah. Leah sighed, her usual composure giving way to a flicker of frustration. Aaron, love is complicated. I get it. But this isn't just about love. It's about trust. Can you honestly say you trust her right now? Her words hit like a punch to the gut. Trust. The foundation of every relationship. And mine had just been shattered. Later that night, Chloe dropped another bombshell. We were sitting on the couch, the tension from the night before still thick in the air. She had a glass of wine in her hand, swirling it lazily as if nothing had happened. Did I tell you I've been arrested before? She asked suddenly, her tone almost playful. My stomach dropped. What? Twice, she said, grinning like it was a badge of honor. Once in college for using someone's credit card to buy concert tickets. And then again last year for a little misunderstanding at a boutique in LA. Both charges got dropped though, so it's no big deal. No big deal? I stared at her, stunned. Chloe, are you serious? Why didn't you tell me this before? She shrugged, unbothered. It never came up. Besides, it's not like I actually did anything wrong. People just overreact. Overreact. The same word she'd used to describe my reaction to her taking $65,000 from my account. Suddenly, everything about her made sense. The impulsiveness, the lack of boundaries, the way she treated money like it was hers for the taking. This wasn't love. It was manipulation. I think you should leave, I said quietly. She frowned, her confidence faltering for the first time. What? Aaron, don't be like that. I told you. I'm taking care of it. I can't do this, I said, standing up. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't let her stay another night. You can't just take what you want and expect me to be okay with it. That's not how this works. Her eyes narrowed. You're overreacting again. Get out, I said, my voice firm now. I mean it, Chloe. We're done. Chloe didn't leave that night. Not quietly, at least. When I told her to go, she just sat there, staring at me like I was the crazy one. You're serious? She asked, her voice sharp. You're really going to end this over something so stupid? Stupid? I repeated, my frustration boiling over. You stole from me, Chloe. You used my money, my trust, like it was nothing. How am I supposed to look past that? She put down her wine glass with a loud clink and stood up. You're acting like I killed someone. I already wrote the check, Aaron. It's done. Paid off. What more do you want from me? What I wanted was for her to show some shred of remorse, some acknowledgement that she'd crossed a line. But Chloe wasn't wired like that. She had this uncanny ability to twist the narrative so that I was the villain, not her. And as much as I hated it, part of me was still desperate to hold on to what we had. You don't get it, do you? I said, my voice softer now. This isn't just about the money. It's about trust. How can I trust you after this? She stepped closer, her expression shifting to something more vulnerable. Aaron, I love you, she said quietly. I messed up, okay? But I only did it because I knew I could fix it. I didn't want to stress you out with all the details. Her words tugged at something deep inside me, the part that still wanted to believe she cared. But Leah's voice echoed in my mind. Can you honestly say you trust her right now? Chloe reached out and touched my arm, her eyes searching mine. Please, Aaron, don't let this ruin us. We're good together. You know we are. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But before I could say anything, she added, Besides, it's not like you've never made a mistake. You're not perfect either. That was her game. Deflect, minimize, and shift the blame. And the worst part? It worked. I didn't tell her to leave again. Instead, I sat down, exhausted, and let her talk her way back into my life. The next day, Leah noticed something was off. We were in the office, going over a major project, but I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept drifting back to Chloe, to the chaos she dragged into my life. Leah, sharp as ever, picked up on it immediately. "Did you talk to her?" she asked during a coffee break. I nodded, staring into the mug in my hands. "She's not leaving." Leah's lips pressed into a thin line. "Aaron, this isn't healthy. You know that, right?" "I know," I said quietly. "But it's not that simple." Leah sat down across from me, her gaze steady. "It is that simple. She took $65,000 from you, lied about it, and then tried to make you feel guilty for being upset. That's not love. That's manipulation." Her words stung because they were true, but I wasn't ready to hear them, not yet. "She gave me the money back," I said weakly, as if that somehow made it better. Leah raised an eyebrow. "With her dad's check, right? Not her own money?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Leah shook her head, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Aaron, this isn't the first time she's done something like this. You told me about her arrests. Do you really think it'll be the last?" I looked up at her, desperate for a reason to believe otherwise. "People can change," Leah sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Not if they don't want to. And Chloe doesn't sound like someone who wants to change. She sounds like someone who thrives on chaos." I wanted to argue, but deep down, I knew she was right. Chloe did thrive on chaos, and I was letting her drag me into it. That evening, Chloe dropped another bombshell. We were sitting in my apartment, the air tense and heavy. She was scrolling through her phone while I tried to work, but the silence between us was unbearable. Finally, she broke it. "My dad's furious," she said, her tone almost amused. "Why?" I asked, though I already had an idea. "Because I wrote that check without asking him," she said with a shrug. "He'll get over it, though. He always does." I stared at her, stunned. "You didn't tell him?" She shook her head, like it was no big deal. "Why would I? He has more money than he knows what to do with. This is pocket change for him." "Chloe," I said slowly, "that's not the point. You can't just keep doing things like this and expecting people to clean up after you." She laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "Don't act like you're perfect, Aaron. Everyone has their flaws." That was her way of shutting me down, turning the focus back on me so she didn't have to answer for her actions. And for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of the games, the excuses, the constant feeling of walking on eggshells. The next morning, Leah confronted me. We were in her office, going over some final edits on a project, when she suddenly put down her pen and looked me straight in the eye. "You're better than this, Aaron," she said firmly. "Better than what?" I asked, though I already knew. "Better than letting someone like Chloe walk all over you," Leah said. "You don't deserve this. And deep down, you know it." Her words hit harder than I expected. Leah had always been honest with me, but this was different. This felt personal. "She's not all bad," I said weakly. "She's just complicated." "Complicated," Leah repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Aaron, she's using you. And you're letting her because you're too afraid to walk away." I opened my mouth to argue, but Leah cut me off. "Okay, love is never too simple, so let her do it with someone else. Throw her crazy ass in jail." Her bluntness shocked me. Leah was usually so composed, so measured in her words. But this was raw, honest, and it made me realize just how much she cared. I can't just, I started, but she interrupted again. "You can," she said, her voice softer now. "And you should. Because, Aaron, she hesitated, her composure faltering for the first time. "I love you, and that should be enough." Her confession left me speechless. For a moment, all I could do was stare at her, trying to process what she just said. Leah, my rock, my trusted confidant, loved me, and I'd been too blind to see it. Leah's words hung in the air like a fragile glass on the edge of a table. I love you, and that should be enough. She didn't look away, her calm demeanor replaced by an unmistakable vulnerability. I'd never seen her like this, so raw, so exposed. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. My mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. Leah had always been there for me. Steady, reliable, everything Chloe wasn't. But love? I hadn't seen it coming. Leah, I started, my voice shaky. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, she said quickly, her composure slipping back into place like a mask. I just needed you to know. Because watching you go through this, letting her destroy you, it's killing me. Her words struck a chord I hadn't realized was there. Chloe was destroying me, piece by piece, and Leah had been the only constant, trying to hold me together. But was I ready to let go of Chloe? The idea of it felt impossible, like trying to cut off a limb. Thank you, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. For everything. Leah nodded, her expression unreadable. Just think about it, Aaron. Think about what you deserve. That night, Chloe showed up unannounced. I hadn't seen her all day, and part of me hoped she'd taken my silence as a sign to stay away. But Chloe wasn't the type to fade quietly into the background. When I opened the door, she was standing there with a bottle of wine in one hand and a mischievous smile on her face. "Miss me?" she asked, breezing past me into the apartment. "Chloe, I don't think," I started, but she cut me off. "Relax, Aaron," she said, kicking off her shoes and flopping onto the couch. "I brought your favorite wine. Let's forget about all the drama for one night. Okay?" Drama. That's all it was to her. A game she thought she could win with a bottle of wine and a charming smile. But I wasn't in the mood to play. "We need to talk," I said, staying by the door. Chloe raised an eyebrow, her playful expression fading. "About what?" "About us," I said. "About everything." She sighed dramatically, like I was being unreasonable. "Not this again. Aaron, I told you I'm sorry. I wrote the check. It's over. Why can't we just move on?" "Because it's not over for me," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "You lied to me. You stole from me. And now you're acting like it's no big deal." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're exhausting. Do you think I'd do this if I didn't love you? I took the money because I knew I could fix it, because I wanted us to have fun, to live a little. You're always so uptight, Aaron. I thought you'd appreciate it." "Appreciate it?" I said, my voice breaking. "You've turned my life into a circus, Chloe. I can't even look at my bank account without feeling sick. And now you're trying to gaslight me into thinking it's my fault." She stood up, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare call me a gaslighter. I've done everything for you, Aaron. I've made your boring little life exciting. And this is how you thank me." For the first time, I saw her clearly, not as the free-spirited artist I'd fallen for, but as someone who thrived on chaos, who took and took without ever giving back. And I was done. "You need to leave," I said, my voice firm. She laughed bitterly. "You think you can just throw me out like trash? After everything we've been through?" "Chloe, please," I said, my resolve weakening under the weight of her anger. "I can't do this anymore." For a moment, I thought she might actually leave. But instead, she walked up to me, her expression softening. "You don't mean that," she said, placing a hand on my chest. "You love me. I know you do." And that was the problem. I did love her, but I couldn't let her destroy me any longer. "I love the idea of you," I said quietly, "but the reality, it's too much." Her face hardened, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her facade. "Fine," she said coldly, "but don't come crawling back to me when you realize no one else will put up with your boring, predictable life." With that, she grabbed her shoes and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The next day, Leah found me sitting in my office, staring blankly at my computer screen. She didn't say anything at first, just placed a coffee on my desk and sat down across from me. "She's gone," I said finally. Leah nodded, her expression unreadable. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," I admitted, "but also lighter." "Is that weird?" "Not at all," Leah said. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that free us the most. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw what I'd been too blind to notice before. Leah wasn't flashy or chaotic like Chloe, but she was steady, dependable, and kind. She was everything I'd been searching for without even realizing it. Leah, I said, my voice trembling. About what you said yesterday. She held up a hand, stopping me. You don't have to say anything. I meant what I said, but I don't expect anything from you. I just want you to be happy, Aaron. Even if it's not with me. Her selflessness nearly broke me. For months, I'd been chasing a love that burned hot and fast. But maybe what I needed was something quieter. Something real. I don't deserve you, I said finally. Leah smiled, a small, sad smile that made my chest ache. Maybe not. But I'll be here, just in case you figure out that you do. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the blank walls that had once felt like a sanctuary. Chloe was gone, but her presence lingered, a ghost of the chaos she'd left behind. I thought about Leah, about her steady gaze and quiet strength, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I'd been wrong about love. Maybe it wasn't about the fireworks or the whirlwind romance. Maybe it was about finding someone who made you feel safe, someone who stayed even when the storms came. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't too late to figure that out. The days following Chloe's departure were an emotional blur. I told myself I'd feel better, lighter, as I'd said to Leah, but the reality was more complicated. Love doesn't just vanish overnight, even when it's toxic. The chaos Chloe brought into my life might have been destructive, but it was also intoxicating, and the silence she left behind felt deafening. The $65,000 check sat on my desk, a tangible reminder of the mess she'd created. I didn't cash it right away. Part of me feared it would bounce, a final insult to injury, but the other part of me wasn't ready to close that chapter just yet. Leah and I didn't talk about her confession right away. She gave me space, as she always had, respecting the emotional limbo I was in. But her presence was constant, grounding. She didn't pry or push. Instead, she offered the quiet support I hadn't realized I needed. One evening, a week after Chloe left, she showed up at my apartment with dinner. I figured you might be tired of takeout, she said, holding up a bag of steaming food. You didn't have to do that, I said, stepping aside to let her in. I know, she said with a small smile. But I wanted to. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't demand conversation. Leah had a way of making even the quiet moments feel meaningful, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. After dinner, as she gathered the takeout containers, I finally broke the silence. Why do you put up with me? She paused, turning to face me. What do you mean? I gestured vaguely, searching for the right words. I've been a mess. I ignored every warning sign with Chloe, and I didn't listen to you when you tried to help. I don't understand why you'd stick around after all that. Leah sat down across from me, her expression calm. Because I care about you, Aaron, and because I know you're worth it. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Even after everything? Especially after everything, she said softly. You're not perfect, Aaron. None of us are. But you're a good person, and that's what matters. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the depth of her sincerity. Leah wasn't flashy or dramatic like Chloe, but she had a quiet strength that I'd come to admire more than I could put into words. She was the calm after the storm, and I realized then how much I'd come to depend on her. The next day, I cashed the check. To my relief, it cleared without issue. The money was back in my account, but it didn't erase the damage Chloe had done. It wasn't just the financial hit. It was the emotional toll, the way she'd made me question my own judgment and worth. Letting go of her wasn't just about cutting ties. It was about rebuilding the parts of myself she'd torn apart. Chloe, true to form, didn't go quietly. She sent me a series of messages, oscillating between anger, apologies, and attempts to guilt me into taking her back. You're making a huge mistake, one read. Another said, you'll never find anyone who loves you the way I do. For a brief moment, her words made me falter. What if she was right? What if I was walking away from something that could have been salvaged? But then I thought about Leah, about her honesty, her patience, her unwavering belief in me, and I knew I couldn't go back. 2 weeks after Chloe's departure, Leah and I went for a walk after work. The air was crisp, the first hints of fall coloring the trees. We strolled in comfortable silence until Leah spoke. "How are you doing?" she asked, her tone light but genuine. "Better," I said. "Still sorting through everything, but better." She nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "Good. You deserve better, Aaron. I hope you know that." "I'm starting to," I admitted. "And a lot of that's because of you." Leah stopped walking, turning to face me. Her expression was steady, but I could see the hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "Aaron, you don't have to say that." "I mean it," I said, stepping closer. "You've been my rock through all of this, Leah, and I don't know if I would have gotten through it without you." Her cheeks flushed, a rare break in her usual composure. "I just wanted you to be okay." "I know," I said, my voice soft. "And I want you to know that I see you. I see how much you've done for me, how much you've put up with, and I don't take it for granted." Leah's lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but instead, she just nodded. We stood there for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. Finally, I reached out, taking her hand in mine. "Leah, I don't know what the future looks like, but I want to figure it out with you. If you'll let me." Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But then she smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that made my chest ache. "I'd like that," she said softly. In the weeks that followed, things between Leah and me shifted. It wasn't some grand, dramatic romance, but something quieter, steadier. We took things slow, giving ourselves time to adjust to the new dynamic. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of peace. Chloe tried to reach out a few more times, but I didn't respond. She was a chapter I'd closed, and I had no intention of reopening it. Leah was right. Love wasn't supposed to be simple, but it also wasn't supposed to be destructive. And with her by my side, I finally understood what it meant to build something real. The experience with Chloe taught me a lot, about trust, about boundaries, and about myself. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I doubted everything. But in the end, I came out stronger, wiser, and more certain of what I wanted. Leah once told me I deserved better, and for the first time, I believed her. Because better wasn't just about finding the right person, it was about becoming the right person. And with her, I finally felt like I was on the right path. Love isn't always fireworks and chaos. Sometimes, it's a quiet, steady flame that keeps you warm even on the coldest nights. And that's exactly what Leah was, a light in the dark, a reminder that even after the storm, there's always a chance to start over. And this time, I wasn't going to let it slip away.